Sabres fall in overtime. Should we feel good or should we feel bad about how that just went? We'll talk about it on Locked On Sabres.
Your Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome in to this Wednesday edition of the Locked On Sabres podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you listen to your podcast. You can watch our show wherever on YouTube. You can watch us there. Be sure to like and subscribe if you're interested in getting ad-free versions of this show, or if you would like to be in our Locked On Sabres Discord, private access to that. Head over to lockedonsabres.supercast.com and sign up to become a part of our Everydayers Club. It's a great opportunity. We have a lot of fun with it in the Discord. Today, just to give you a little peek behind the curtain, we were talking about what would be better, the Metro side of the bracket with a tougher matchup in the first round, or the Atlantic side of the bracket with a much tougher matchup in the second round. That's the kind of stuff we're jumping ahead to already. It's okay. They're in a really good spot. And for now, maybe you can entertain those types of conversations. We'll talk a little bit about that, by the way, today on the show after going through it with some of our everydayers. So that's coming up in a little bit on the show. Sneaky Joe DiBiase. Today's episode is presented by FanDuel. It's last call for football on FanDuel. If you are a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. 4-3. The Tampa Bay Lightning win in overtime over the Buffalo Sabres. We'll go through what we saw in the game, or my feeling about how that game unfolded and how it ended, and a lost opportunity, but also a really good trip out to Florida. Pittsburgh tomorrow, and then it's the Olympic break. So we'll get to that. Rooting interest, by the way, on tonight's action. That's coming up as well. Last night, though, so I kind of want to skip right to the end. We'll talk a little bit about what happened before in the game along the way. But I want to skip right to the end to try to figure out in context whether we should feel good about that result the way it played out. Because if you asked me before the game, and I mentioned it on this show, going into the Florida trip, a trip that the Sabres often do not do well in, I think I even said 2 was acceptable. 2 of a possible 4 points was acceptable. Well, they came away with 3. And if I asked every Sabre fan going into those 2 games, would you take 3 out of 4 points? I think 100%, 99.9% would have said, yeah, I would. But sometimes it can change based on how the game unfolds. I think if I asked that question today, given how it went, you got to ask what your starting point was. Am I signing up when it is tied 2-2 late in the third period? Am I signing up when it is 3-2 Buffalo with a minute to go? That is probably going to change your answer. So the Sabres end up falling by giving up a 1-goal lead. They had 2 leads in the third period and squandered both. And Samuelsson got them out to that 2-1 lead. He continues to be the story of the season player-wise. Bjorkstrand tied it on the power play, and then the Sabres power play answered back. Tage to Doan, a great pass, and Josh Doan puts his 18th away on the man advantage to get a 3-2 lead late in the game. At the time of the final face-off of the game, which was at the 1:22 mark, the Sabres' win probability at that point was 92%. When you get down to further along and you get to about the 30-second mark, they would have been in the 99% territory. And they ended up losing that game. The 1% ended up hitting. So I have a tough time jumping to, okay, reset, look beyond the result at the end. They got 3 points out of 4. And a day later, I am much more in that mode. But at the time that the game ended and the time of the tying goal, it's not necessarily how I'm watching it. I'm reacting to it as the situation is unfolding. And that's a game you got to put away. Or, you can't have that happen to you too often. And to their credit, They've not really had that happen to them all that often. They've come close to blowing leads, but they haven't really gone all the way to losing it. And in this game, they lose out on a point. And get to why that really happened. You're in the final minute of the game. You've got Tage Thompson, Alex Tuch, and Peyton Krebs out on the ice. And there is a defensive breakdown with 25 seconds to go. You can't have that. You're leaving Darren Radish, who is one of the highest scoring defensemen in the league this year. That was his 17th goal of the year. You left him wide open, not really even at the point. He's starting to move down from the point. There was so much space for him to take up. Now, I think you could debate whose responsibility it was to challenge Radish at the top. But no doubt, somebody had to. There is, when you are down a man and the other team has the extra attacker on the ice, they've got 6, you've got 5. Someone's going to you're going to have to leave someone a little bit open. Generally, the way to approach that in hockey is to leave a little bit of extra space to one of the guys on the wall. Their angle isn't as good. There is not as much traffic going in a shot from that direction. Leave the guy on the wall with a little bit more space. Don't leave the guy at the top wide open because he's got a more direct path. He's got more net to shoot at, a better angle, and much more likely to have more bodies along the way where a deflection could happen, a tip could happen. So when I watch that playback, the guy that I pick out to think this was probably him, I don't want to go all the way because maybe it was Alex Tuch and he was covering for somebody else. Tuch was covering the guy in the high slot. Peyton Krebs is guarding Kucherov, I think, way too tight. And it's Kucherov. I get it. He's maybe going to win MVP this year. He's incredible. But that's not the guy to guard that closely. There needs to be a challenge out on the top. And I look at Krebs for that. So I think it was a misread on his part. And Radish blows it by Colton Ellis, who I otherwise thought had a really good game. I thought Ellis was really strong. His goal saved above expected ends up coming in just barely above 0.18 on the night. It was much higher than that. I think he was strong in this game. He did let in those couple at the end. I don't know how much you want to blame him for either one. It's a point-blank shot from Radish and then Gensel on a breakaway. But he did let that one in, and Tampa ties the game. So I'm not really happy in that moment that they gave it up. But I'm still thinking, all right, you got a point, go get the other one. And they go to overtime, and it's back and forth, and Dahlin gets robbed by Vasilevsky in alone on a 2-on-1. You got a couple other chances by the Sabres. Tampa had some chances. The play that ended it was one of the most frustrating plays for me on the season. I think if it had just been a normal overtime goal where Tampa had possession and a guy just beat Ellis clean with a really good shot and a really good opportunity like a Kucherov, then I might have got over the loss a little bit quicker. It was the way it happened. It was such a maddening play to end the game. And I think that is why it drove me nuts really into today. I think at this point I'm okay. But it was driving me nuts waking up this morning even. The read that Peyton Krebs makes is mind-boggling. And I do just want to point out, because I'm about to, tear him apart a little bit for that play. It's worth mentioning. Peyton Krebs earned the Sabres 2 points the night before on Monday night. It was arguably his best game as a Buffalo Sabre. He had 3 points on the night, big goal, big assists, big moments, moved up to the top line, answered the bell when there were some injuries around the team. So you got to give him credit there. But he followed it up last night with an arguable mistake on the game-tying goal and an inarguable mistake on the overtime goal. What on earth is Peyton Krebs doing on that play? Somebody explain it to me. I don't think there is an explain it to me because the read makes no sense at all. Dahlin, who's on the ice with you and is the only defenseman, is down in the corner. He's fighting for the puck because he was in on the play. It's not his responsibility to charge back an extra 30 feet and be the last man back. He's up. And in 3-on-3 overtime, it's much more positionless than 5-on-5. You saw Matthias Samuelsson during the overtime forechecking. The guy standing in front of Vasilevsky in front of the net. That's going to happen. So you have to have the recognition as a forward. Hey, Dahlin's up there. Where's my other teammate? There's Alex Tuch. He's also in front of me. And by the way, Tuch is the guy standing in the right position because while Dahlin is fighting for it, Tuch is standing in an area where if he gets it, he's going to walk in and have an amazing scoring chance. If the puck is jarred free, that Dahlin is fighting for. Krebs goes to a similar position, which again, it's not even like, hey, you took a risk, you took a gamble, and it didn't pay off. That's not what happened because there was no upside to what Peyton Krebs did. There was no reward for what he did. He moved up and stayed up in the zone. If the puck had come loose, he wasn't getting it. Tuch was. There's no situation where Krebs is getting that hockey puck, ever. So you have no business hanging around in the zone when Jake Gensel is sprinting behind you in case his man gets the puck and then it's an easy breakaway pass. Krebs needs to recognize there, I am the last man back, and I need to be focused on where is Jake Gensel. And Dahlin actually prevents a pass from getting out. Krebs has an opportunity to recognize, oh, hey, wait a minute. He got behind me. Let me charge back and make up for that. It was only a second, but he had a moment there where Dahlin afforded him the time to make up for his error of getting beat deep by Gensel. And Krebs doubled down. He spun his hips around and remained in the zone still. It's one of the worst mental plays I've seen by a Sabre all season, and it cost them a point. I don't want to go too much further than Krebs in the big picture. I've liked him this year at times. I thought he was great on Monday night. He's done an admirable job. Thanks, Bills, for messing that up on me. Krebs moving up to the top line during the 10-game win streak and in other moments. Like, he's done better than I would have expected. But, man, you just can't make a mistake like that in that moment. And then Gensel beats Colton Ellis in the 5-hole. Again, Samuelsson, though, what a game from him. 2 goals. He's up to 11 on the season, which is unbelievable. Samuelsson should be going to Milan. Matthias Samuelsson should be on Team USA. He should. Over Jackson Lacombe, at least, if not other guys. And maybe if there's one more injury, they would consider it. I don't need that to happen from a Sabre perspective. You don't want any more guys getting risk of injury. But for Samuelsson, I think he absolutely has earned a spot on Team USA, but he's not going to get it. Okay, when we come back, by the way, some quick numbers actually before we go to break. Got outshot in this game, 35-26 in favor of the Lightning. And if you do look around at some of the other, listen, the Sabres were playing on a back-to-back in Tampa on the road, best team in the East. And I know they're dealing with some injuries. It's not stunning to me that they got outplayed numerically. Shot attempts, Tampa 46-29 at 5-on-5. Scoring chances were 24-10 in favor of the Lightning. Expected goals were 2.9 to 0.9. Massive in favor of the Lightning. Goals saved above expected, by the way, in this game. Again, as I mentioned, 0.8 above expected for Colton Ellis, while Vasilevsky on the other side allowed 0.5 or saved than the negative, 0.5 below it. So anyways, better game from Ellis than from Vasilevsky. When we come back, thinking about the Lightning, there's a rumor today about Artemi Panarin and the Tampa Bay Lightning. Seems like that's where he might want to go. I got a thought experiment to get to on the playoff bracket. Are we sure we want the Sabres to finish top 3? Talk about it when we return here on Locked On Sabres. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast is presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. You know, it's not just football. The Olympics are going on right now. I was looking at some curling bets. That's right, curling bets here on a Wednesday. Why not? Hockey, of course, is coming. Women's hockey starting tomorrow. That's going to be on the TV when I'm doing the morning show with Jeremy. And, I'll be keeping an eye on some of those betting lines. So that should be a lot of fun. And it's the last call for football on FanDuel. One last Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. It's Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel's making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding with an underdog, building one last same game parlay. It's the game everyone's been waiting for. And this is where your predictions can turn into your plays, stats, turn into storylines, every snap feeling bigger. It's a perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count because the Super Bowl only comes once, and then the season's over. Last call for football on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. The Sabres get the 1 point against the Lightning. They go to 70 points, which is 2 back of the Red Wings for second in the division. With a game in hand, the Red Wings play on Wednesday night. Sabres play tomorrow, so they will have an opportunity. They might have an opportunity to catch them before the break. And now they have a 2-point advantage on Boston, tied with Montreal in the standings, but they have the tiebreaker at the moment. And 7 points above the first teams out of the playoff picture, which are Toronto, Columbus, and Washington. They also gained a point, by the way, on Ottawa last night as Ottawa lost. So they are now 9 points back of the Sabres. Was talking about this a little bit on our Discord today. We were tossing around on WGR as well. The Sabres now sit third in the Atlantic. And what sparked this conversation was a rumor from earlier today that Artemi Panarin, who is going to get traded by the New York Rangers, wants to play or could want to play. I mean, it was really more labeled like he does want to play for the Lightning. And, I've heard that, he wants to be on a team that has other Russians on it, which, would make sense to some extent, be comfortable with people that culturally and language barriers and whatnot. And Tampa has multiple guys like that. Of course, Vasilevsky and Kucherov are right at the top of the list. I don't know if he is close with them. I think they would have played. Weren't Kucherov and Panarin on the junior team that played here? I don't know if Kucherov was on that team, but I think he was. But anyways, Tampa. And Tampa's already a destination, right? They're a great team. They're great weather. They got it all. Cup winning pedigree. So if Panarin goes to Tampa, that's even scarier because they're going to get Brayden Point back at some point here. He did not play last night. They're going to get Anthony Cirelli back, who's going to miss the Olympics. They're going to get Nick Paul back. Hedman is going to get more and more minutes under his belt. That team looks unbelievable right now on paper if they're fully healthy for the playoffs, especially if they have Artemi Panarin. Super dangerous. The number one team I would not want to see the Sabres have to play come postseason time. Doesn't mean you can't win. Columbus with Yarmo beat the Lightning team in the playoffs once that had 130 plus points. So, was talking about the sides of the bracket. This, again, is our first experience with this disaster of a playoff format that they've had for a long time now, but the Sabres never made it with it. Top 3 in each division and then 2 wild cards. There is an argument, you might disagree with it, but there's an argument to be made that it would be better, it would be in the Sabres' best interest not to finish in the top 3 in the division. Now, why might I say that? Why might I even throw that out there as an idea? The reason why you would wonder that, and this would have to be your belief about the strength of all of these teams, is that the Atlantic is far superior to the Metro, which it is in terms of depth, and that avoiding the Lightning for 2 rounds, if you can manage it, and I should mention here, you just go to the wild card. You don't have to be on the Metro side of things. You could play Tampa. And that's why it's not really something you could control. It's more of a in a perfect world type of conversation. In a perfect world, would you rather be on the Metro side or would you rather be on the Atlantic side? I think you'd rather be on the Metro side. The thing, though, about how that could play out, and this could happen, the Sabres could easily finish as the number 1 wild card team and play against the Carolina Hurricanes in round 1. The Hurricanes are the second best team in the conference, and they are not maybe far off of what Tampa is. I think if Tampa gets Panarin, they are, but the Hurricanes are a dangerous team. But would you rather have the harder matchup in round 1 in order to get an easier matchup in round 2? Basically to say your odds of winning 1 round in the Atlantic are better. You play Detroit in the first round, you play Montreal or Boston in the first round, your odds are better than if you play Carolina. However, on the Metro side, there is a legitimate case, and I believe that this would be true. There's a better chance of winning 2 rounds on the Metro side of things than there is in the Atlantic. So basically, it's just where do you want your tougher matchup, and do you believe there's a big difference between Carolina and the Lightning, which I think there could be by the time we get to playoff time. I just want to say it's not the end of the world for me if they fall into a wild card spot, but only if it's the Hurricanes and if it's the Metro side. I think it's a nightmare disaster for seeding purposes if you play the Lightning. Obviously, it's a home run of a season. You break the playoff drought, and let's go have some fun for a couple of weeks against Tampa if you do inevitably play them. I just can't see the Sabres winning that series. I could see them winning almost any other series. Carolina would be tougher, and they would be a much bigger underdog and should be against them than they should be against Detroit or against Montreal. I think they should be favored against Detroit. I think they would be favored against Detroit. And Montreal might be a pick 'em. I think they'd be favored against Boston. But something about that possibility of, hey, if you do beat the Hurricanes in round 1 and you give me like the Islanders in the second round, suddenly I've got a great shot at making the conference finals. And maybe that's too big. Am I putting too many steps ahead? Probably. But I think they could go on a run if they got to the Metro side of the bracket. But they also could lose in round 1, and that would be more likely. So that's what you got to really weigh. That's currently the way it looks. I think the safest option, of course, conservative option, would be give me the second or third Atlantic team. Give me the Red Wings. Let me win that series. And if I get hammered by Tampa, I get hammered by Tampa. And maybe I get lucky. Maybe I get a great goalie series. So that's the way that I currently look at it. And it's interesting, though. We're going to have to really have a new way of experiencing the playoffs here because we've never had them make it with this being the format. It's such a stupid format. It's just such a stupid format, right? Like, you look at conference rank. If it was 1 through 8 right now, the Sabres would be playing the 3 seed Red Wings. It would go Tampa, number 1, playing number 8, the Islanders. Number 2, Carolina, playing 7, Boston. 3, Detroit, playing 6, Pittsburgh. And 4, Buffalo, playing 5, Montreal. So that's what it would be if it was 1 through 8. Instead, you're playing the 3 seed. And Pittsburgh, who in a 1 through 8 would be the 6, gets to play the 8 seed. Islanders. Not fair. Not fair. Not fair at all. And Tampa, by the way, well, I guess Carolina's the 2 seed. They have to play the 5, Montreal. Such a dumb format. And maybe they'll change it one day, but I'm not too confident of that. When we return, what your rooting interest should be on Wednesday night. There are some big games to root for. Big games. And these teams are playing their final games in most cases before the break. That when we return here on Locked On Sabres. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Reminder, by the way, Sabres take a break. We're not. We'll be here every day during the week. We'll be talking Olympic hockey, trade deadline, Lindy Ruff for the Jack Adams. We got a lot to get to in the coming weeks during this 20-day break. So very excited about that time. I'm very excited about the Olympics. We'll see how Tage does. We'll see how Darlene does. Tonight, Wednesday night, got some scoreboard watching, big games around the league that matter to the Sabres. And there are some pretty easy decisions to make tonight on who you want to root for. Start with the easy ones. 7 o'clock, Montreal at Winnipeg. That game is a pick'em. The Canadiens and the Jets are both minus 110 on the money line. So Winnipeg has not had a very strong year, much worse than they did last year. So rooting for them tonight. It is Connor Hellebuck starting in net. It is Sam Montembeault going for Montreal, and he has been the second best goalie of the 2 guys in Montreal this year. So advantage Winnipeg in net. I mean, that's a big reason why I think they are a pick 'em for this game because Montreal's had a better season. So that game's an easy one. Go Jets. Then 9 o'clock, Red Wings Mammoth. This is the game that matters to whether or not the Sabres will have a shot at getting the 2 seed before the break. The Mammoth would have to beat the Red Wings in regulation, and the Sabres would have to get a win tomorrow, and then they'd be the 2 seed. The Mammoth, by the way, have been awesome lately. They are on fire. They are right now playing like one of the best teams in the Western Conference. They are in the top spot in terms of the wild card. They've won like 8 of their last 11. It's been a really good run for Utah. Plus 23 goal differential is really strong. They're favored in that game. They're at home. And in terms of the goalie battle for that game, it's going to be Vejmelka for Utah. And don't know about Detroit. I'm going to guess it's going to be John Gibson, looking at who's played for them lately. But Vejmelka goes for Utah. That's at 9. You're rooting for the Mammoth. And then to go back to one of the earlier games, this one's a little tougher, but I still – actually, there's one other easy one. Sorry. You're rooting for Chicago to beat Columbus. That's a very, very easy one. And goalie matchup there is Jet Greaves for Columbus versus Spencer Knight for Chicago. The game that is a little trickier to decide on, but I don't think is really that tricky. It's because you have 2 Eastern Conference teams, Boston and Florida. That's the TNT game tonight, by the way, at 7. Bruins and Panthers. You got to be rooting for Florida. Same approach that I took with Ottawa. You root for them while they're down, and if they start to creep closer to you, then maybe you change your opinion and you start rooting against them. But for now, the Florida Panthers, with 59 points, are 11 points back of the Buffalo Sabres. I'm not thinking it's the end of the world if they get 2. Boston, meanwhile, who are in a spot and are fighting for top 3, they have 68 points. The Sabres have 70, and now they have the same amount of games played. So I think Florida handing Boston a loss would be a much better result for the Sabres than if it were the other way around. You definitely don't want a 3-point night, but I think most important is the Bruins falling in tonight's matchup. So that one is also at 7. So some good scoreboard watching. And the other thing, by the way, that we'll do during the 20-day break, we'll get more in detail on how good or bad these teams are around the Sabres. How good are the Red Wings? How good are the Canadiens and the Bruins? Are the Blue Jackets actually for real? They've been winning a ton lately. Is Toronto got any shot of coming back? We'll really dive in on the playoff picture and like what the numbers say. I've been watching a lot of these teams as of late. I've got a lot more to say about them than we've had time for because obviously we're focused on the Sabres. So for the next 20 days, we'll have a lot of that along the way as well. So tomorrow, preview edition of the show, we'll talk about the matchup against the Penguins, 7 o'clock at home. Should expect Alex Lyon between the pipes. And we'll see what else we get. Will Zach Benson play? Josh Norris might have a chance to play. It could look like a very different lineup. Sabres fall in Tampa. They got a point, 3 out of 4 in Florida. Talk to you tomorrow. Get into our Discord. If you got a question or a comment you want to make on the show, go to LockedOnSabres.supercast.com. That is the place to sign up, and we'll talk to you next time on the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network.